Bueno, we're back in the office like we never left it, but in a special place. We're in Bryan Calvo's house today. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Today we're talking about some wonderful. We have a whole bunch of questions for you.
Okay.
I hope you have time, because
Let's get into it.
first we wanted to get to know you a little bit more. If you can tell us a little bit about who is Bryan, because we see you a little bit too quiet in the TV. So we wanted to know your background. You're from Hialeah.
Born and raised in Hialeah, Cuban parents, product of the public schools. I went to North Twin Lakes Elementary, Palm Springs Middle, and then Westland Hialeah Senior High School. Graduated, went off to Harvard University. I studied political science for 4 years, and then I also did an internship at the White House with President Trump when I was during my bachelor, and then I came back to Hialeah, and I enrolled in FIU law school, where I did my Juris Doctorate degree. Spent 3 years doing that, and in 2021, I finally ran for Hialeah City Council. It was a hard-fought election, but I was able to win that. And I was a council member for the city of Hialeah for 3.5 years. And now I'm running for mayor of the city of Hialeah.
What made you decided to run for mayor?
Well, obviously, in my work as a council member, I think, a lot of the stuff that I was talking about is a lot of the similar issues that we're still facing today, like rising taxes, increasing water bills, a lot of the issues with, the quality of life that we're having in the city of Hialeah. And so for me, it was important to say, in this year that we're celebrating the 100th year anniversary of the city of Hialeah, it's time for a change. And that's something that we're hearing a lot in the community. People are ready for a change. They want the city to prosper. And what we've seen in the policies the last 3 years of the current administration is the city just keeps going down. Life is getting more expensive, but you don't see a higher quality of life. You see the streets are dirtier than ever. You see the potholes. You don't have enough police, right? There's a safety concern. And so it's important to have a change. I'm certainly a new generation coming into the political arena, at least the mayorship. And so it's those same things that I was fighting for as a council member, now being able to actually do from the mayor's seat, which is the chief executive of the city.
I was going to ask you, because my way to your house, I saw like maybe 3 businesses that I guess they were vandalized. And I lived all one. I was born in Hialeah. I haven't been in Hialeah for many years, and I feel like I came back to in place. Like it's a time machine. It looks dirty. There was a lot of potholes, and I did notice there was 3 businesses that were. It looked like they were vandalized.
Yeah, and if you think about it, in the same amount of time, right? In the last 20 years, let's call it, cities like Doral have exploded in development. You can't even imagine what Doral was 20 years ago compared to what it is today. The same thing for, downtown Miami or your Wynwoods or even your Pilates or Broward or Kendall. But in Hialeah, it stayed the same. And many times it's gotten worse because the city is 20 years older, so the infrastructure is older. I've been talking about fire hydrants in our city where we have almost 20% of our fire hydrants that are not.
I've noticed that you're taking some pictures and they look rusty.
They're extremely, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous for quality of life. You also talk about, for example, businesses in our city. So one of the businesses that we've had for over 70 years, which is Stephen's Deli. It's a staple of the Hialeah culture. That business just closed down. Right? I understand, because people are unable to continue operating, or they're unable to continue having their business here. A lot of people are actually selling their homes or selling their condos because they can't afford the life you're going to have and move out. And so what you're seeing is a drain in the city, and it really needs leadership. It needs new leadership. Right. I want to be clear. That's what I'm proposing as mayor. Not only is it the idea of saying, hey, I'm a young person that's running for office, that I want to bring new ideas and new challenge to you, which I'd love to get into with you, but it's also having sort of the skills in order to get those things done. Right. I am an attorney. I did go and get my poli-sci degree from Harvard. I have the experience working in the White House, but I also have the experience of being a council member. So I understand Hialeah's government from the inside and knowing, how are the ways that we're going to get.
I was going to ask, right, do you want to explain in Spanish? Because I know a lot of following in Zolaris are Spanish, and Hialeah, mostly people talking in Spanish. So I don't know, you want to say the same thing in Spanish?
¿Cuál pregunta tiene que tener?
Bueno, la pregunta es, lo que te dijiste ahora, cuando yo estaba viviendo en tu casa, me di cuenta que ahí habían 3 negocios que parecían que le robaron, tenía la tabla en la ventana. Y yo nací en Hialeah. Yo nací en Hialeah, yo me fui de Hialeah cuando tenía 3 años, voy a cumplir 40, como decir, exacto, te voy a cumplir. Pero cuando estaba manejando aquí, para atrás, es como si nada cambió. Parece sucio, las calles tienen hueco, los negocios lo vi, ok, estaban vandalized, no sé, es como si nunca nada ha cambiado. Entonces,
Es como una máquina de tiempo. Estamos, la ciudad de Hialeah, vamos a decir, en los últimos 20 años, es igual. Y en muchos casos ha empeorado, porque es la misma infraestructura. Estamos hablando de que las tuberías se están poniendo más viejas, los negocios se ponen más viejos, los edificios, muchos de los condominios en nuestra ciudad también están ahora en el proceso de los 40 o 50 años de certificación. La ciudad ha envejecido en larga parte y no tenemos el desarrollo que estamos viendo, por ejemplo, en ciudades como Doral, en ciudades como nuevo downtown de Miami o Wynwood o Miami Lakes o Broward o Cando, que han crecido en los últimos 20 años. Y eso no lo vemos en Hialeah. En larga parte es una falta de liderazgo, es una sobregobernanza del gobierno local, porque tú para abrir un negocio aquí en la ciudad de Hialeah te puedes demorar 2 o 3 años para recibir un permiso. Entonces tienes negocios como el Deli de Steven, aquí en el East de Hialeah, que ha estado en negocio más de 70 años y ahora, después de 70 años, tienen que cerrar sus puertas porque ya no pueden operar su negocio en nuestra ciudad. Lo mismo lo estar viendo con las casas residenciales o los condominios. Las personas están teniendo que vender su casa, hacer su condominio, porque no pueden costear de vivir la vida aquí en la ciudad de Hialeah. Y tú no ves el dinero, todo el dinero que se está pagando en impuestos, que son casi $500 millones aquí en la ciudad de Hialeah, no se está invirtiendo en lo que tiene que invertirse. No estamos viendo nuevas calles, nuevas tuberías de infraestructura, no estamos viendo más policía, hay un temor grande en lo que es la seguridad pública. No le está viendo invertido el dinero en lo que son los hidrantes de fuego. El dinero lo que está en larga parte es enriqueciendo a los mismos políticos que se acaban de poner una pensión hace un par de semanas retroactiva para el alcalde, para los concejales. Ese es el cambio que yo estoy aspirando a hacer, no solamente como una persona joven que me he criado en esta ciudad, que esta es mi comunidad, pero también como una persona que me he preparado para esta posición porque ya fui concejal, soy abogado y tengo esa experiencia también de haber trabajado en la Casa Blanca. Es entrar y poder hacer un cambio real, no solamente la promesa y la politiquería.
yo hice una encuesta en Instagram y mucha gente, lo first thing que preguntaron es la bit del agua de Hialeah, it increased so much. We understand that in houses there's people that have different family members in there. There's probably like 7 family members, but they're saying it's a huge increasement. As a mayor, how can you help them for the water bills to start going down? I know there's like a 10% charge to
The franchise fee.
yes.
Yes. When I ran for city council 4 years ago, the number one issue in our city was the costs of water.
Right.
Now that I'm running for mayor 4 years later, the number one issue is the cost of water.
We got like 20 questions. So what's the same thing?
And why? And this is a great question because when I ran and for city council, I said, I want to fix water. That's the first thing that I want to do. I get into the city council. The first resolution that I ever passed as a council member was to open up an investigation into the Hialeah Water Department. Why is it that Hialeah pays the third most expensive water in all of Miami-Dade
Right.
compared to the 39 municipalities that we have? The answer to that question, I was able to ascertain. The answer is that it's a total web. We purposefully, as a city, charge people more money on water to pad the city budget so we can have additional funds.
Oh, wow.
So the water department operates almost like a second tax. It's not just your property taxes, but you also get taxed through the franchise fee, through other things that they throw into the formula when they generate your water bill to basically upcharge you so that the city gets more money. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's the simple answer. How do you fix that? You can absolutely fix that. The city of Hialeah has its own water department.
Right.
We're autonomous in that sense. We can play with the math to lower that. But obviously, the only way you're going to accomplish that is you got to cut costs. You got to cut things like elected official pensions and all the mismanagement of funds that exist within the city budget. If you're able to do that successfully, then you can turn around and say, yes, I'm going to lower your water bill. But until somebody actually goes ahead and does that, the rest is just, it politics. People are going to say, yeah, the water, they blame it on Miami-Dade County.
I was going to say, they went to the board meeting on Tuesday and they were talking about them. They were actually requesting for more money to fix supposedly the pipes. They're all rusting. It's not true.
It is true. It is true that the pipes are rusted. But in a typical water department, what do? You charge people for water, you get that money, and then you invest it back into the system to put new pipes, to fix your distribution, your wastewater, your clean water. You invest in the system. We don't do that. We use the water department as a piggyback. Well, the money comes in. It doesn't stay in the water department. It gets kicked over to the general fund and pays for other things. It'll pay for things like pensions for elected officials, right? So instead of staying where it needs to be, it gets used for other things. And then that's why over the accumulation of many, many years of doing the same thing, now today you have a water department that you have to spend $100 million in order to fix all the issues that just the water department has, right? And then on top of that, you have to say, well, the budget of the city has expanded so much, ballooned so much, that now you have to cut a lot of stuff in order to get it down to a level that then you could turn around and say, I'm going to lower water. And that's where we are. And the reality is that as a council member, that's what I push for. I said, we need to start today, because the longer we keep kicking this can down the road, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. But politically, the mayor didn't want to do that. The mayor didn't want to go ahead and cut costs. The mayor did. What they wanted to do is to keep spending, because now he gets to resign. He walks away. He goes to Washington or do and they use the city this mess. Whoever gets in inherits a big mess. But again, can a solution be found? Absolutely. But it takes the desire to actually get there and push that. And up until this point, we hadn't seen that desire. You hear a lot of promises and stuff like that, but when it gets to actually doing something, no limit.
You want to say in Spanish now?
Sí, o sea, la pregunta es
Eso era el agua.
sobre el agua.
Cuando te puse en Instagram, que we were going to sit with you, and mucha gente me preguntaba en DM que el costo del agua es súper cara en Hialeah. Y qué puedes, como alcalde, qué puedes hacer para que baje, porque dice, hay muchas familias que me dijeron, viven cada 3 meses y pagamos $1,000 de agua. Pero ¿cuánta gente vive ahí? Y me dijeron, no, somos 5 o 6, pero estamos siempre trabajando. No sé por qué el agua siempre está muy alta. Entonces, cuando le preguntan a alguien, nadie le da respuesta. No, es porque el agua subió.
Yeah. El departamento del agua, para ser muy claro, es el descaro más grande que tiene la ciudad de Hialeah. ¿Ok? Es un departamento que lo operan para que haya más entradas al presupuesto de la ciudad sin tener que tocar los impuestos. O sea, suben los precios del agua, usan el dinero no para el departamento del agua, sino para pasarlo al presupuesto de la ciudad. Es como un tax, un segundo tax, ¿no? Se pagan los taxes de la propiedad, después se paga un tax que es lo que se llama costo de franquicia sobre el uso del agua. Y vamos a ser claros, en el 2021, cuando yo me postulé para concejal, el tema número 1 en esa campaña era los altos precios de agua. Que aquí en el condado de Miami-Dade, Hialeah se paga la tercera agua más cara en todas las 39 ciudades. ¿Ok? Ahora en esta elección de alcaldía, o sea, el problema más grande es otra vez las facturas de agua. Cuando yo entré al consejo, mi pregunta era, ¿por qué estamos pagando esto? Que es la pregunta que te están haciendo tú. Y nosotros hicimos una serie de investigaciones dentro del departamento hasta que ya me dijeron no investiguen más. Okay. Está llegando con muchos detalles. Pero investigamos un poco y la respuesta a la pregunta es esa. Que la ciudad usa el departamento del agua no para simplemente hacer los gastos de mantenimiento que necesita el departamento, pero para recibir más fondos adicionales. ¿Y qué hacen con esos fondos? En vez de invertirlos en lo que es las tuberías y las aguas negras, y que entran a la ciudad, lo usan ese dinero para el presupuesto. Por ejemplo, para darse los retiros que se acaban de dar los oficiales electos, el mismo alcalde, los concejales. Esos son los dineros donde se están usando y lo pagas tú en tu factura de agua. So, ¿cuál es la solución? La solución es que para poder reducir el costo de agua, lo que tienes que hacer es que tienes que cortar el presupuesto de las ciudades aéreas. Tienes que entrar a ese presupuesto que ahora está por arriba de los $500 millones y identificar cuáles son los mal gastos que están ocurriendo, eliminar esos mal gastos para después poder ir al departamento de agua y decir, bueno, voy a bajar las tarifas del agua. Y para hacer eso, a este momento no ha habido ninguna voluntad. Todo político, todo el mundo que se aspira dice, yo voy a bajar el agua, o le echan la culpa. Mucha gente le echan la culpa al condado de Miami-Dade. No, la culpa lo tiene Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade no somos nosotros. Nosotros solamente estamos en el medio. Todo eso es mentira.
Eso pasó en Malta en el board meeting, que le estaban pidiendo más dinero a Miami-Dade y le dijeron que no.
Las ciudades de Hialeah tienen su propio departamento de agua. No todas las ciudades tienen su propio departamento. Nosotros tenemos nuestra propia planta de agua. Nosotros producimos agua. Y tenemos nuestros propios empleados, nuestros propios camiones, nuestras propias tuberías. Todo es de la ciudad de Hialeah y ha funcionado 100 años así. Pero ahora que estamos usando ese dinero, y lo hemos estado usando por varios años ya, lo estamos usando para el presupuesto general, en vez de invertirlo dentro del departamento de agua, no se supone. Entonces tienes una situación donde el departamento de agua ahora a lo mejor necesita 50, 100 millones de dólares de arreglos para tuberías que están rotas, de hidrantes de fuego que no están funcionando. Y en vez de invertir el dinero ahí, lo tiran al presupuesto. Ese es el movimiento estratégico que tú tienes que entrar como alcalde y decir, como el pivot dose, right? Vamos a cortar los malgastos que existen dentro del presupuesto, vamos a eliminar las pensiones del retiro, vamos a eliminar los contratos que se le dan a los amigos sin licitación, vamos a eliminar esos gastos millonarios que no tienen lugar en nuestra ciudad. Y entonces ya cuando has bajado ese presupuesto, puedes virarte, ir al departamento de agua y decir, ok, ya puedo bajar las tarifas aquí en el departamento del agua.
Doral just bought a land. They're going to do low-income apartments, and they're trying to get investors for them to build something for that money to stay in the city for the taxes to go down. Is there a possibility that Hialeah could do that?
You know, Hialeah actually has a huge parcel that's 55 acres. And when you think about property values right now in Miami-Dade County, I mean, 55 acres of property owned by the city that's largely vacant at this moment, that's a lot of real estate.
Yeah.
And, I really do believe that we should do something with that land.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be vacant. I do think that we should probably, some sort of housing or low-income housing in that area. But we need to think outside of the box, right? Because for the politician, it's always like, well, if we need more money, we're just going to raise taxes. And that's what you've seen in the last few years. Taxes have gone up $111 million in the last 3 years in Hialeah. They went up 13% the first year, they went up 4% the second year, and they went up 11% the third year. I was the only council member, a board of 7 people, plus the mayor. I was the only person to vote against tax increases because I understand the community that people can't afford to keep spending more and more money. And that's why I'm saying you have to have creative solutions that are not just, I'm going to raise taxes, right? You're going to raise your water. You have to be able to leverage, hey, I have 55 acres of real estate. Let me do something with this land, right? Maybe it's selling the land. Maybe it's renting it out. Maybe it's developing housing on it, right? If you're able to use these sort of creative strategies, you're able to get more money into the coffers of the city, right? And if you're lowering the bad expenses, all the unnecessary stuff, you can run the city in a very fruitful way for the residents of the city.
En Doral compraron un land ahora, que supuestamente en ese land van a ser 2 apartamentos por low income, y ella iba a coger unos investors para unirse para que puedan hacer algo para que bajen los taxes en Doral. ¿Cree que en Hialeah se puede hacer algo así?
En el político siempre la forma más fácil para que cuando hay un problema de déficit dice, bueno, yo lo que voy a hacer es subirlo en costo.
Oye.
Y para ser claro, yo cuando estaba en el Consejo de la Hialeah tuve 3 presupuestos seguidos donde se propuso subir los impuestos y se terminó subiendo el aeropuerto. Los impuestos han subido más de 100 millones de dólares en los últimos 3 años. Yo fui, dentro de ese grupo de 7 concejales y concejales, yo fui la única persona ¿ok? Que en 3 diferentes ocasiones voté y contra de la subida de impuestos. Porque para mí, yo entiendo el pueblo de Hialeah, entiendo que la gente no puede seguir pagando más impuestos, más impuestos, más impuestos. Eso tiene que ser, como un alcalde, tiene que ser creativo, ¿ok? La ciudad de Hialeah tiene en estos momentos 55 acres de terreno que son dueños de la ciudad y son terrenos que están en larga parte vacantes. So, como están los precios ahora mismo de las propiedades, 55 acres de terreno en Hialeah es bastante dinero. Y la solución creativa, ¿no? Es, bueno, ¿cómo podemos invertir o usar este terreno para que nos dé lucro, para que entre más dinero en la ciudad de Hialeah? Y con ese dinero que está entrando, entonces puedes decir, bueno, vamos a bajar los impuestos.
Right.
¿Qué puedes hacer? Puedes hacer creaciones de desarrollos de viviendas, puedes vender posiblemente unas partes del terreno, puedes rentar terrenos a diferentes industrias. So, puedes hacer soluciones creativas para resolver estos problemas, pero no hay voluntad. No hay voluntad, porque para el político es, bueno, yo estoy aquí un par de años, vamos a ver cuánto dinero me voy a poner. Eso es lo que dice todo el mundo. Y entonces, ¿qué hace? Cuando viene un problema, dice, voy a subir los impuestos, voy a subir el agua, y yo estoy aquí hasta que me renuncio y voy para Washington y me hago cabrón.
Salió un artículo en Miami Herald que se va a llevar todavía el salario de Hialeah to Washington. Is that true? That you could, or do you agree that he should leave with the salary from Hialeah to Washington?
Well, what's been reported is he's going to make more than 190,000, which that's the mayoral salary. By the way, a pretty big salary if you think about the community in Hialeah. There's been other people running for office, for mayor specifically, that said that $190,000 is a meager salary for the role of mayor. I don't believe that that's true. I think $190,000 is a lot of compensation for a mayor. Apparently, Mayor Boba doesn't think that that's enough money. So he's going off, he's doing this thing, and whatever, he's going to be making more than that. But the part that I take issue with is that on the heaves of you saying I'm leaving, you turn around and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pass a pension, and I'm going to retroactively award myself not only the money that I'm going to go get in the private sector, but now for the rest of my life, I'm going to be paid a pension for, what was it, 3 years of work? I mean, you have people in our community that they work 20, 25 years and they don't have a retirement. And for 3 years of work, now you're going to be making money off the cost of us, the taxpayers.
Correct.
For the rest of your life. And by the way, that's something that didn't exist when you were voted into office. That wasn't part of the deal. The deal was you got in, you were going to make 190 grand. Now you're leaving and you're saying, hey, yeah, I'm going to add myself benefits, auto add myself benefits, because it wasn't that the residents of Hialeah said, we voted and we said, hey, we're going to give you this. No, you're doing it yourself. And by the way, this hasn't been reported too much, but in 2013, the city had a referendum, a citywide referendum. 8% of the voters in Hialeah voted to eliminate elected official pensions. 80% of the residents. And now that they've done this 11 years later, they've totally ignored the will of the people that voted and said, we don't want our elected officials to receive a pension. So that's what I take issue with. And as mayor, I want to be very clear. The very first thing that we have to do is eliminate elected official pensions. And we have to do it in a way that no one else in the future can come back and say, well, I'm going to do it now.
Right.
Because I eliminate them and then the next day I add it back. And that's really been the
So
problem.
you wanted to remove it.
It had to be removed permanent. That's
So there's another question. And here in Miami-Dade today, we post a lot of crimes that happens in Hialeah. And majority of the crimes, unfortunately, as parents Cubans, it happens with a lot of Cuban. A lot of people are coming from Cuba, and actually it happened 3 days ago. They sold a truck full of milk, and they were selling in the street in Hialeah. As the mayor of Hialeah, how can we be strict with the immigrants coming and doing all these crimes? They come specifically from Cuba to Hialeah.
Yeah.
And they do all these crimes. There was we reported. I think we do like 4 or 5 reports a week about that. And I feel like it's coming more now. I know with immigration with Trump, it's getting a little bit strict, but it just still happens. Like when somebody wants to find something, they come to Hialeah. No me dice en el camión.
What the lot of truck? Listen, we need law and order. Plain and simple. law and order in the city of Hialeah. When I was a council member, one of the top issues that I fought for was this issue of 911. Okay. We had 911 operators come to a council meeting and say, we do not have enough personnel. We need help. We need more people to do our job. Let me be clear. The mayor, the entire council, they were against it. I was pro law enforcement. I was pro 911 operators. And as a mayor, one of the first things that we have to do is we need to increase the number of police officers. There is right now a very large public safety issue where people do not feel safe in our community.
Yeah.
I know firsthand because I knock on doors and I interact with the residents, and people will look at you through the blind of their window, or they're hesitantly trying to open the door. They're scary. They're scared, and that's not what Hialeah is about. Hialeah has always been the place, I want to raise my kids here and have a family here and it's safe and go to the park, and people are scared. And the only way that you combat that is by having more law enforcement. Right now, the city has, we understand, well over 300,000 people that are living in the city of Hialeah. All right. And by the most sort of standard police metrics, you should have one police officer for every 1,000 residents. All right. We have about 200 police officers for 300,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Right. So it's a deficiency of police. We actually have the same amount of police officers now that we did 20 years when the city was half its size. So that just gives you an idea of how much work needs to be done to hire police officers, but to also retain the people that we're hiring. Because of a lot of our officers, they come in, they do their training, they work a year or two, and then they're off and they go to another city.
And then go to somewhere else.
So that issue of retention and hiring is the same thing that we were experiencing with 911 operators, that I was fighting for the 911 operators. And that's what we need to bring to our police department in general. That's the only way that we're going to fix these issues that you're highlighting, so we can have a safer city. But in order to do that, right, because it's very easy to say, yeah, I'm going to hire no police. Anybody can say that.
Yeah.
But you got to do so in a way that doesn't mean you're going to turn around and raise taxes. Right? So the maneuvering politically is you got to cut expenses on stuff that's not as important, right? And then you need to go and spend that money where it is needed, which is law enforcement in this very moment. So again, we're going to eliminate elected official pensions. I've said that multiple times. But we're going to eliminate all these shady contracts that are going on. We're going to eliminate, all these unnecessary expenses. Spend the money on law enforcement. Spend the money on 911. Spend the money fixing our fire hydrants. Right? These are that when you think of a city, what is the number one thing a city has to do? Public safety, fire safety. Those two things. Everything else is third or fourth or fifth down the road. And it's an issue of priorities. And those are my priorities.
I have a couple people also DMing me before, really though, is the HOA corruption. Hialeah has a huge problem going on with the HOA. As a mayor, can you do something about that, or the HOA?
Absolutely. And the answer on this issue has always been, it's out of our jurisdiction. Go to the state, go complain to DPPR, whatever. The city can't do anything about it. That's always the answer. And that's false. That's false. I can tell you because I'm an attorney and I have clients that own condominiums and they have been ripped off by their association. They've been charged ridiculous special assessments. No work is ever done. The money is stolen. And now they live in a dilapidated building. And you see that happening in our city right now. When we talk about the word corruption doesn't just mean corruption within the city guttery.
Right.
Right? Corruption exists in your associations. Right? And by the way, that's a crime. Right? Again, Hialeah has its own police department, its own police. Right? We had employed detectives. We can have a whole unit specialize in condominium crimes and go in and investigate when there's malfeasance, when people are stealing money or they're, not doing the books and they're pocketing rights. So that corruption, that could be weeded out. And I think that's really going to help the problem in a large manner. Then you also have our building department side of things, right? Because you have a lot of these buildings out there, they have issues with the 40-year, 50-year certification. So to some extent, you also have to work with these buildings, work with the buildings that are doing things right, and have the building department be sort of a resource, not just the person that comes in and says, hey, violation, right? And so I think it's going to take a multifaceted approach, but I think the number one thing I want to do day one as mayor of the city of Hialeah is to investigate the corruption that exists in condominiums and in HOAs, and to make sure that we're weeding out these bad actors, because that's really affecting, all these rising prices when it comes to repairs and all these sorts of things.
That's a good point that you said, because I didn't know that mayors can get involved with the HOA.
They can.
We had calls for HOA Ron, and actually in Durham, they're between Durham and Sweetwater, and everybody has turned their backs on them.
Yeah.
So I didn't know, even the sheriff has turned their backs on them, Rody. So that's good that you taught me that the mayor could get involved to hook them out.
Absolutely. A crime is a crime. And what the police department does is enforces state law, right? So you can employ the police department to do investigations, right? Is it easy? No, it's not easy. You got to have a whole unit. You got to be going in and getting the books from these people. And it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
But that's the only way you're going to fix the problem. And I'm no stranger to hard work. I mean, that is how you move the ball. That is how you fix the community. And that's certainly one of my top priorities as mayor.
So, mucha gente estaba quejándose que en Hialeah, bueno, en todo Miami, no HOA, famoso HOA, como alcalde, usted puede meterse a ver lo que está pasando con los HOA, o no, porque tengo una persona que conozco que están en between Doran y Sweetwater, que están haciendo fraude. Se ve que los papeles de los señores y todo el mundo le está dando la espalda. Como alcalde, usted puede meterse ahí a ver si hay fraude de verdad en el HOA.
Sí, absolutamente. Y el político siempre te dice, no, esto no es una cosa que yo puedo hacer. Tienes que ir al Estado, tienes que ir al DPBR, está fuera de nuestra jurisdicción. Y eso es falso. Eso es falso. Y te puedo decir por qué es falso. Como abogado, yo tengo clientes que son dueños del condominio que han sido estafados por las mismas asociaciones que han pagado el dinero de los special assessments y después no se hace ningún trabajo. ¿Y qué hacen? Me contratan a mí como abogado, vamos a la corte y luchamos por esa persona. El alcalde de la ciudad de Hialeah, date cuenta que es un alcalde fuerte y es el jefe del departamento de policía. Y como tenemos nuestro propio departamento de policía, nosotros podemos tener una unidad dentro de ese departamento que vaya y que investigue a estas asociaciones, porque cuando hablamos de la palabra corrupción no es solamente dentro del gobierno municipal, pero la corrupción también existe en estas asociaciones, ¿ok? Esos son crímenes. Estamos hablando de crímenes financieros, donde una persona con un dinero se lo pone en un bolsillo que está destinado para una construcción y esa construcción nunca ocurre. Mi póliza, mi política como alcalde en la ciudad de Hialeah sería en el primer día crear esa unidad dentro del departamento de policía y caerle arriba a estas asociaciones, investigar cuando hay crímenes y a las personas que están probadas que han hecho un crimen con el dinero de la asociación, arrestar a esas personas y llevarlos a la fiscalía. Eso es lo que tiene que hacer un alcalde y no lo estamos viendo en estos momentos. Y date cuenta que en Hialeah casi la mitad de la población de la ciudad de Hialeah vive en un condominio. Es una gran parte de nuestra comunidad y es un gran problema. Ese es el cambio que tiene que hacerse y ese sería mi política. To be clear, as a council member, one of the things that I'm most proud about when we were able to pass a resolution against a company like Cubamax, which we know has very close ties with the Cuban dictatorship. And they operate in our city basically without impunity, meaning they violate a bunch of Hialeah ordinances, things like LED billboards, a bunch of construction permit issues. They have a ton of locales in our city. We have tons of locations, and we understand that companies like Cubamax are the ways in which the Cuban dictatorship launders their money. Not only is it money that leaves Miami and goes in the form of remittances to Cuba, but it's also money that the dictatorship then wants to export out into outside of the island of Cuba into the international markets. And they do so through companies like Cubamax, and there are others here. But in Hialeah, we are, like we said, the number one Cuban-American city in the entire United States, yet we allow these businesses that are violating all these laws, because we're talking about violations of not only city ordinances and city codes and the resolution that I passed, but they're violating state law. such as money laundering. Money laundering is a crime. It doesn't matter if it's Cuba or Circuit Plus. They violate Herms-Burden and other federal laws. So you have all these violations. We are the city that we would care about this the most because, say, of the Cuban American demographic, yet we do absolutely nothing.
Correct.
Right? And I passed this resolution. It was unanimously approved by the council, and the mayor did nothing. Nothing.
It's always a bit disappointing because he's Cuban and he the way he's frustrated about it.
Of course, but again, it's the politician and always says, I denounce the dictatorship, and they stand in a photo op and they redeem a street, Padre Vida, and that's it. And that's where the accent goes. And then they go, we're not going to wear.
Right.
What you need is a mayor that's actually going to get in the mud and fight the issue head on. And that's what I'm proposing. When it comes to something like Cubamax, right? We should go in as a city and we should investigate these businesses, right? I want to create a task force within the city that will go in and have a prosecutor, have investigators from our own police department that can do that, that are trained in financial crimes and what have you, and investigate these companies that are operating in our jurisdiction.
They actually opened a huge one in by my house in Kendall, the huge Cubamax, and I'm like surprised that no one has talked about it, no one has done. So it's a good point that you do want to.
And something that's very shady to me personally is I talk to business owners all the time. And I have people that, hey, I've been wanting to open up a restaurant for 2-3 years, and I've been unable to get the permits and been unable to open up my little small business or whatever. But how is it that these companies that we know have connections with the Cuban regime, that they're able to open, like you said, a huge sort of center with no issues and there's no permitting issues, and they're able to do so quickly, and they continue operating with a bunch of violations, and no code enforcement goes and red tags the building. None of that stuff happens.
Right.
I find that very, very odd and very disappointing, quite frank, because you have people in our city, like right now, Hialeah passed a food truck ban, right? So if you have a food truck and you try to operate within the city of Hialeah, the city will go out and find you, and they'll put a tag on your thing and say that you can't operate a food truck. So you have the little guy that saved $40,000, fucking sells a little food truck, is just trying to make by. The city falls on top of them, violation, and then you have Cubamax doing whatever the hell they want, okay? And the city does not. I find that very odd, and that's something that I will change as mayor of the city of Hialeah.
Oh, that's very good to hear. I'm probably saying it because I said Cubamax is growing everywhere. They took over a bank by my house, and it's huge. Huge. I have another question about Otaola. He has a legal case against the mayor in Kawa. If he's elected or he has to go to court, will you be supporting that case or you won't?
Listen, I get along with Alex. I think we see eye to eye on many things. Certainly, he's been an inspiration when it comes to a lot of these issues with Cuba. And, I'm no stranger to suing figures in politics. I myself sued Mayor Esteban for something that I believe was being done incorrectly. Also, as an attorney, I can tell you that I believe that everybody has the right to access to courts, air their grievances. So to the extent that, I think really the basis of the question is, do I support his efforts? Absolutely, I do. And I do support Republican efforts, large in part. I do think that the Democrat sort of politicians in our county have really put us in a very, very precarious state, raising taxes in the county, doing all sorts of agendas that I'm not for as a Republican. And so I do believe that those are the kinds of people that we need to get out of our government, certainly at the county level. And I lead that fight in Hialeah. Although in Hialeah, everybody's supposedly a Republican, if you look at the actual policies that they're passing, they're not Republican policies, right? These people are saying, I want more pensions. I want to be in office as long as possible, right? My opponent right now, he's been in office 30 years. 30 years, that's longer than I've been alive. And now he wants to keep going, right? So those are the things that I'm fighting against in the city of Hialeah. And absolutely, I think that's the change that our entire community needs to see, not only Hialeah, but throughout Miami-Dade County.
Were you surprised the way that Bobo said that he was going to Washington? Because they asked him so many times. He's like, no, 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 no. I'm staying here. I'm staying here. And then all of a sudden, a week later, he's like, no, I'm dating. Were you surprised with that?
Maybe slightly surprised at the timing. We had heard that rumor, I think, for many months that he was going to be leaving. I think it became very clear into his administration that he didn't want to be mayor. I mean, that's just the bottom line. For him,
I feel that way.
for him becoming mayor of Hialeah was a consolation prize. He wanted to do the county thing.
Mm-hmm.
This sort of was like beneath him. So he did it for the money or whatever, reason he, gave for doing it. But he was always looking for an exit plan.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't come as a total surprise that, he decided to do that. I think what is really shocking and very sort of indicative of the kind of mayor he was the last 3 years is like, on the way out, I'm gonna do this pension thing. That's a total slap.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you surprised that he's supporting Rene Garcia?
I'm not surprised at all. Obviously, the contention that me and him have had for years, I would never think that he would support me. And by the way, I wouldn't want him to support me too. But I do think that Mayor Bowo is looking for somebody that's going to cover. They want somebody to get in there that's not going to investigate the last 3 years. That's not going to go in, remove the pension, right? They want somebody to, pass the torch over. That's going to keep business as usual in the state of Hialeah. And that's really who Rene Garcia is, right? A guy that's been in politics. I mean, he was a city council member, right? Then Steve Bowo became a state rep. Then who was state rep after Esteban Bowo? Rene Garcia. Then Steve Bowo became a county commissioner. Who was the county commissioner after? Rene Garcia. So now Steve Bowo became mayor. Who does he want him to replace him? And Rene Garcia, the guy that's been following him around the last 30 years throughout all the positions that exist possibly in politics here in the Hialeah, Miami-Dade area. So again, that's not who I am.
Right.
For me, I'm the change guy. I'm the outsider. I'm the guy coming into this and saying, I actually want to fix the issues. I actually have policies. I have ideas. This is what I want to do.
I see you have a passion for it. I see. I at top already. Our podcast has been open already for 2 months, and I can tell you that from sitting from the person, I can tell who does it for the money and who does it for the passion, and I guarantee that that you do it for the passion. We're in the campaign right now that we are done with recycle politicians.
Yep.
We don't want to see someone has been there 10 years and hasn't done anything.
Doesn't done anything.
We have seen Rene Garcia in Ward meetings. He's very into it, but I think that's it. He's done. He should be done. I think we should push young people that are in the middle, that I see that you're in the middle, and I see you having a future in being a mayor. I have a lot of questions I can have. We could be here forever, but I want to cut this down because there's a couple that people have asked me, or they have told me they're scared of the way you are because you're very blunt. You're very like, if you have to tell someone to go fly a kite, you do it, and they're scared that the way that you act with you being the board meetings.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you want to tell those people that, don't be scared, it's just that's the way that you are, you just want everything to be clear, or...
That's the way I am. For me, it's no funny business.
Because on the street,
shoot.
right, the news, they don't put everything else. They just show you fighting with Bull all the time. So everybody's like, oh my God, he's always fighting with him. Is he a nice person? I'm like, actually, I met you in the library and with your wife, and you guys seem very calm, but they no es que tiene un caretito, es como un Trump, pero copido peor. It's a good thing because you're very clear, and you're very, you like to talk clearly in front of the cameras, but the news don't help you. Like, the news cut that part of you. So they're like, y la esposa es buena gente, pobrecita, que mira que en Bryan el Dorantico.
Listen, I think in politics, you have to have a strong character.
Yeah.
Because what you're fighting against is a lot of corruption, a lot of bad people that get into this business. And for me, I'm a straight shooter. I'll tell you how it is. You may agree with me, you may not disagree with me, but at least you know what my position is. And that's very important. And I think people really appreciate that at the end of the day. Now, if it's on a particular issue that we disagree with me, maybe you think, oh, yeah, I don't like that guy too much. But at the end of the day, that's what our community has been lacking for a very long time. You have the person that whispers and tells you everything super sweet, everything you want to hear. but when they start doing the actions, they don't do it.
Right.
Okay. Or they do the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's always been, hey, this is how it is. And this is what I'm going to do. And you vote for me or don't vote for me. Up until right now, I've received a lot of support in my last 2 elections. Mind you, I won every precinct in Hialeah last year. I obviously won my council race with 67% of the vote. So I walk into this race saying, you know what? I'm going to do the same exact thing that I've been doing all these years, which is I'm a straight shooter. And yeah, do I have the sensible side? Of course. Do I want did things for our community? Yes. For me, it's not only about fighting and saying I'm calling out the wrongs, but it's also, hey, what are the ideas that I bring?
Right.
Right. And my ideas are, I want the city to prosper. I like a city to grow and flourish. We want the city to look nice. We want our streets paved, right? We want police enforcement in our community. We want a city where we're proud to call Hialeah home, right? We're proud to live in this city. And right now, Hialeah is always the butt of the joke. Oh yeah, you're in Hialeah. And that can change, but that can only change if you have a change in our government. And that's where I'm at.
Before we finish this, I had one client, I'm not client, someone DMing me, and they wanted to know if you were single. Que si ese muchacho está soltero, porque mira qué bonito, so they wanted to know si eres soltero. Mira, if he's like me.
Yo, I'm not single.
Viste, he's married and your wife supports you in your campaign.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you want to say before we finish here?
Listen, we have elections obviously in November, so it's still a little early. Over the next couple months, I'm sure there'll be a lot of changes in not only the political challengers that I may have, but in the politics of the city, it's constantly changing. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come back maybe in a couple months and speak some more about some of the issues. But right now, what I want people to know is that we are hitting the ground running. We are going out into the community. We're knocking on doors. We're taking this message to the residents, to the business community, and everybody in between. And I want to be very clear that to vote for Bryan Calvo is to vote for a change in the city of Hialeah.
That's right. And change for Hialeah that you guys needed. Yeah. That's Bryan. Thank you so much for letting us do this interview.
Absolutely.
You do have a Facebook? No, you have an Instagram?
I have all of it. I have Instagram, Facebook, X. It's all the same. It's Bryan Calvo Esquire. Bryan Calvo ESQ.
Okay. And if anybody has any questions, they're more likely to meet you up and you will answer them.
Absolutely.
Will you be doing more events?
We're going to be doing events over the next coming months. We'll announce it on our social media for sure. Again, it's kind of early,
right?
Because this is in November and a lot of people are still kind of like not well informed that we do have elections. But I think as we're getting closer, we'll definitely be doing more stuff.
Thank you so much, David.